By now, I have no doubt that most of you have heard about some manner of suspicious happenings in regard to the hurricane relief effort. Maybe you have heard about the bungled response from the top levels of the federal government that now seem to be ignoring everywhere but Florida and Asheville. Or maybe you've heard some of the stories about FEMA confiscating goods from donation sites and relocating them to their own sites to cover their shortfalls in supplies, or only doling them out to people who have gone through an online application process when most folks don't have power, cell, or internet service in the worst areas. Well, here's one that you might not have heard of yet, but that everyone should be asking questions about. A man and his son, notably qualified to provide not just aid, but actual rescue via their private helicopter. This father and son duo conducted 4 rescues last Saturday, but in the course of conducting yet another rescue, was told that if he flew back up the mountain, he would be arrested. And I've been getting calls in from folks with family and friends trying to conduct rescues and drop supplies, and he is not the only one facing these threats. Hang around for this one, guys. It is going to piss you off. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am back in the office that is half studio, half toddler play place, as our power and internet are both back on now as of Friday, day 7. Of course, just after I posted the last video and sat around for several hours watching it creep online via hotspot. Anyway, this video is brought to you all with the help of Blackout Coffee Company, whose coffee was honestly a great comfort after the storm, and I 100% unplugged the fridge from the generator for 5 minutes every morning to get my cup of coffee and learned the importance of small comforts like that in a disaster. Blackout is a great company that supports this channel and has supported it for a long time, supports traditional values and your Second Amendment rights with direct donations to some of your favorite gun rights groups through their partner roasts. So to get yourself a great cup of coffee that you can feel good about and help support the channel, go to blackoutcoffee.com/libertydoll. All right, so let me give you a bit of background on Mr. Jordan Seedham and his son first. They're both members of the Sandhills Volunteer Fire Department in Pageland, South Carolina. The father, Jordan Seedham, is a former Chesterfield County Sheriff's deputy with years of search and rescue training. He is also a qualified helicopter pilot and owns his own chopper. So, when he woke up last Saturday morning to reports of people stranded without power and running out of food, some of which with young children, all accessible only by air, he and his son decided to step up and assist in a way that very few others could. They prepped water, food, and other supplies and plotted out a course using mapping software they had. Before setting out, Jordan did ask the local airport for permission to fly across the airport to save time and fuel, and got all the appropriate permissions. They set course for Banner Elk, North Carolina, near Lake Lure, and the stranded couple that they had heard about via Facebook. And let me tell you, there were a lot of those posts over the last week. Now, along the way, they made contact with a group of law enforcement and fire rescue personnel. They coordinated with them and got radio frequencies to remain in contact. It took a bit of time, but they eventually got the supplies to the couple stranded on the mountain. Now, throughout the day, they spotted and rescued 4 other people. And at this point, the government had yet to show up. Private citizens were the only people trying to rescue or bring supplies to anyone in those mountains. At that point, all government eyes were turned to Florida or Ukraine. Low on fuel, they headed to the airport where they slept in recliners. The next morning, they awoke to a storm of texts, phone calls, and messages, some very desperate and terrified, all about people that were stranded and needed help. Jordan's son made the final call and said that they couldn't not help. Refueled, back in the air, they were still en route when they saw a woman frantically waving, and thus their day began. Now, sometime later, they were doing a partial landing where they didn't allow the full weight of the chopper to rest on the ground. The concrete driveway was partially washed away, like so many other places, and the ground was just not stable enough to land fully. After some discussion with the stranded couple, it was decided that Jordan would fly the woman out and come back one at a time for the husband and then finally his own son. Now, it's at this point where that should have been a tale of heroism and it turns into a bit of a tale of tragedy. Now, did the mountain have a mudslide? No. Despite what you would think, did some other kind of disaster take place? Well, yeah, it did, and that disaster is the government saying, hello, and I am here to help. So when Mr. Sedum dropped off the woman with some other aid workers, the aid workers, mostly out-of-state firemen, heard his story, heard his credentials, and they promptly gave him a radio and offered to coordinate with him. But that is until Emperor Ass, or I guess the local fire chief, came over and had Jordan repeat everything all over again. Even after hearing all of Jordan's qualifications, he still told him to leave the area, wouldn't even let him go back for his own son. Now, stunned by this, Jordan had some respectful back and forth with this petty tyrant. He finally said he was going back up for the man and his co-pilot, aka his son. It was at this point that Chief Jackass, not his real name, said that he would have him arrested if he went back up the mountain and retrieved either his son or the stranded husband. The woman that he had just rescued was standing there listening the whole time to this, knowing that her husband was still stranded up on that mountain. Now, left with no good options, he said, and flew back up the mountain anyway to retrieve his son, but he had to tell the man that his wife was safe, but that he had to leave him there or else he and his son would both be arrested and sent to jail for rescue efforts that at the time the government had not even begun to do. Now, I am talking families where I heard the stories, I saw the Facebook posts, I saw the videos coming out of dying cell phones, of people, families sometimes with toddlers, with young children that hadn't had water for 2 days, that had no food, that had no accessible anything, no way to get out of this situation. Anyway, so within an hour after this whole thing happened, where Jordan was threatened with arrest, the whole area was declared a no-fly zone and restricted airspace. And it wasn't until a few days later that Coast Guard rescue choppers began showing up. So, you folks tell me, is that chief, you think, liable for any harm or even deaths that may have occurred because he turned away skilled and trained volunteers? I am curious of what you all have to say about this in the comments. Now, unfortunately, after this came out in the local news, I have gotten calls from a few friends who have family that are also private pilots or involved in the rescue efforts in other ways, and I am hearing a lot of similar stories. And that is very concerning to me. Very similar stories of government sweeping in and taking over supplies to make sure that they only go to the people who have been through the application processes, not letting private pilots volunteer, turning away civilians who want to help, stopping trucks of supplies and making them turn around, closing airports to anyone but the government, restricting airspace over areas where people need to be rescued. And now, in that case, okay, maybe it's so the government aircraft don't have to worry about civilians being in the way, but they're told that private pilots can ask for permission, and these pilots are asking for permission through all the proper channels and being denied. Pallets of supplies are being dropped off at some of the government-run locations, including a local airport, and are still sitting there after almost a week. And these are just the stories that I have been told firsthand by locals involved in the efforts. I am sure there are even more similar stories than that. We are so incredibly lucky that the worst my family had to endure was a week without power and internet and being trapped inside a maze of trees for a few days. You can check out my prepping video that I posted yesterday for what I learned about that and see how honestly it's a flat out miracle that we didn't lose the house. Like we are literally sitting perfectly in a clearing surrounded by 20 downed trees in all directions, and all we got was a little roof leak, which I still don't even understand. So I cannot even imagine what the people further west of us are going through. The people of North Carolina and eastern Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, I mean, half of the Southeast got wiped out. Government took days to show up. In the meantime, best they could do was threaten the amazing community who stepped up and tried to get people out. There's not a lot that shocks me these days when it comes to government incompetence and malfeasance, but this one really shocked me, and I am beyond disgusted. Disgusted isn't even the right word. And still, all the news is focusing on Asheville and on Florida. And I mean, these people, so many people are being left with nothing and went days without any help. And as always, it is the private citizens doing more to bring up supplies, even by pack mule and hiking teams. I know someone who personally, his wife is going out tomorrow in a hiking team to try and get up this mountain, trying to get people out, clear debris, and even rebuild roads. It's all of the rednecks out there with their farm equipment and chainsaws clearing the way to rescuing old ladies and children. Never in my life have I seen a community come together like this, and I am convinced that if this were New England instead, it would be nothing but violence and chaos. People talk shit about the South, but we are getting things done, and largely on our own. And it has never been more clear to me throughout this that the people of America really are alone when it comes to the bureaucracy. So if you're looking to help out in your own way, I would suggest going through organizations like the Cajun Navy, or any of the other nonprofits that are involved in this, going through churches, vetting them first, while staying very clear away from FEMA and the Red Cross with the way that they're handling this, with what the government is doing in these rescue efforts. One thing is for sure, a lot of people in Appalachia were not fans of the government, and they certainly will not be after this. And quite frankly, this is probably one of the saddest and most disappointing videos that I have ever made for this channel. So with that is it for this video, guys. You know the drill for all of the algorithm things. I wish that I had links to give you of telling you who to go to and where to go to donate for these efforts, but I honestly don't know. I just got internet back a couple hours ago as I'm recording this, so I just do your due diligence. There's plenty of people on social media that are spreading organizations that are actually working here in these areas. You know the drill for all of the algorithm things. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you are new here, ring that notification bell. I suspect that as more information comes out about what's going on, I'm going to be covering this even more as the information comes out. As always, thanks for tuning in. Happy shooting and stay safe out there.